individuals or artists who had bipolar disorder, their art was a form of healing. It was a form of healing them first and subsequently others. A composer, Berlioz, he turned to music for consolation and for control of his often overwhelming mood swings. He said, "I could well believe there is a violent, expansive force within me. I see that wide horizon and the sun, and I suffer so much, that if I did not take a grip of myself, I should shout and roll on the ground. I have found only one way of completely satisfying this immense appetite for emotion, and that is music. Without it, I am certain I could not go on living." And when I first started out producing music, let's just say I wasn't the happiest individual. And to me, making music was my form of therapy. I told this to people. I was like, this is my happy place, and it still is. It's if you told me I had to stop making music, I would my level of happiness would drop significantly. And so I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm bipolar, but I can vibe with this idea that making music or doing art, creating, is a form of therapy in itself. And I think that's very, very interesting. And also another topic idea, I'm just thinking out loud, but how art can be therapy. I actually studied music therapy in grad school, but I didn't want to be a music therapist because, and it might sound stupid, but music therapy in the United States isn't taken seriously. It's not in the DSM as a form of treatment, or there's no disorders regarding it. It's kind of just, I don't know, not a lot of the psychological field doesn't take it seriously as much as Europe for some reason. And I don't know, it sounds dumb, but I didn't want to be a professional that wasn't taken seriously by the field I was in. I still believe that music can be used as therapy, but that's when you're creating music for other people. As far as creating music to help the artist creating music to help themselves, or the artist creating art to help themselves, that's actually not been looked at too much. And that's probably something I would want to go into more. Jamison says, creative work can act not only as a means of escape from pain, but also as a way of structuring chaotic emotions and thoughts, numbing pain through abstraction and the rigors of disciplined thought, and creating a distance from the source of despair. So Jamison explores the treatments of bipolar disorder, and what I was alluding to earlier about how medication, especially lithium, can dull one's creativity, which is kind of disturbing. That, I don't know, in this day and age, the treatments we've figured out can actually take away good art from society, and that to me is alarming. Personal note, I've always been against prescribing. I still am. I understand that in psychiatry, you give therapy and at the same time prescribe. But I come from a psychology background where I believe in therapy and talk therapy and certain techniques that a patient can use that doesn't require taking pills. I might actually have one of my psychiatrist friends come on at a later episode and debate this, because it's something that I see a lot more bad than good from pharmaceuticals. And I believe that there's ways to work with an individual from a more therapeutic and coaching standpoint to help eliminate some mental illnesses. I understand that there are some, like schizophrenia, which must be treated with pharmaceuticals. Sure. But I believe that forms of depression, mania, bipolar disorder, I do believe that this can be treated without prescription drugs. And so Jamison explains that there are artists that stop taking their medications when they're prescribed with bipolar disorder because they miss the highs or the emotional intensity associated with their illness, or because they feel that drug side effects interfere with the clarity and rapidity of their thought or diminish their levels of enthusiasm, emotion, and energy. And she poses the question, does psychiatric treatment have to result in happier but blander and less imaginative artists? That's scary to me. Right? Like, it kind of just makes you like really dopey and unimaginative and boring, really. So that's, that picture in my mind is like, fuck no. That's no. There's got to be better ways. But this goes back to why even try to fully eliminate the mental illness in the first place if it is actually fueling one's creativity, fueling one's artistic expression. There was one artist, Edvard Munch, who was quoted as saying, a German once said to me, "But you could rid yourself of many of your troubles," to which I replied, "They are part of me and my art. They are indistinguishable from me, and it would destroy my art. I want to keep the sufferings." Jamison says that this is a common concern, that many artists and writers believe that turmoil, suffering, and extremes in emotional experience are integral not only to the human condition, but to their abilities as artists. They fear that psychiatric treatment will transform them into normal, well-adjusted, dampened, and bloodless souls, unable or unmotivated to write, paint, or compose. These fears have greatly intensified as the result of the availability of a wide range of highly effective mood-stabling medications. And I give feedback to a lot of people on Facebook through their music, and one thing that always comes about is that there's not any expression in their music. There's no story being told. There's no purpose to the song. And I love music, especially bass music. I work with a lot of people who write bass music, like dubstep, hybrid trap, drum and bass, glitch hop. I need to hear some raw something, like anger, angst, like struggle, rage. You know what I'm saying? Especially rage. Like, I feel like a lot of people's music, they're trying to sound cool, but there's no emotion behind it. And I need that. And I'm not saying that I need people to express mental illness, but I do think there's something to be said with someone's negative emotions being displayed in art. And I think it's beautiful if you can do it. And like I said, channel it and not let it consume you. So a lot of the people who take lithium for their bipolar disorder, they feel that life was flatter, colorless. They were less active, less obsessive, and less elated. And if they're in this study, if the amount of lithium was decreased, say cut in half, it didn't matter. The people in the study this is looked at were more likely to become manic or severely depressed again. So when looking at lithium as a solution, it needs to be administered at a large proportion, right? Like, you can't just do it at a little bit, according to this study. So you have to really dull the person, which is alarming to me. Jamison says how lithium acts as a brake, like a brake on a car. You know what I'm saying? The patients report that lithium inhibits creativity so that the individual is unable to express himself or herself. Drive is diminished and there's no incentive. And it's kind of a catch-22 because bipolar disorder, it not only does it get worse over time, but it becomes less responsive to medication the longer it's untreated. So she kind of finishes off with how we can prevent, or how science is looking into preventing bipolar disorder in the future with prenatal testing and abortion, and how we can like genetically test for whether the fetus is going to have bipolar disorder. And this is, for obvious reasons, pretty kind of an ethical dilemma here. Do you want to potentially take away someone's creative genius in essence? And that's very troubling to me. Very, very troubling. And I could totally see this happening. Like if you were to say to a couple, your son or daughter is going to have bipolar disorder, but we can genetically prevent this. I mean, most are going to say, yeah, of course, we don't want our son or daughter to have a significant mental illness. But my reply would be, if there's other ways of dealing with bipolar disorder, as far as therapy, treatment, not with drugs, and or channeling it, controlling it. Like, I don't know why I had this thought, but it's like a character from X-Men or Avengers, right? Like I'm gonna go with Cyclops. Like he has his laser eyes. And he has his glasses that protect it, so he can control it, right? If he didn't have those glasses, he'd be shooting lasers everywhere, right? And so I believe that power, that energy, can be controlled in a way, and I want to look into that more. And Sir Francis Galton, he was quoted as saying, "Men who leave their mark on the world are very often those who, being gifted and full of nervous power, are at the same time haunted and driven by a dominant idea, and are therefore within a measurable distance of insanity." This goes back to the idea, that some of the greatest philosophers in history have been saying that this form of madness is helpful. They almost imply that it's necessary, but it's just how you control it, really, how you live with it, and kind of use it as, I guess my personal analogy would be, for me, when I started making music, it was my outlet. At the time, my outlet was partying a lot and partying pretty hardcore. And that was obviously not going anywhere. And so when I started making music, it was my way of channeling this kind of crazy boy mentality and lifestyle into something positive. And they say that bipolar disorder, some of it's genetic and some of it is environmentally created. And I really do believe that with and I hate to be so cliche, but the rise of social media, people get this manic kind of dopamine hit when they get like indications on their phone, like someone liked their content or messaged them or something. And there's also a rise in depression. There's a lot of people struggling with this kind of disconnect of communication. And I'm noticing this a lot with younger individuals. And I do believe that manic-depressive illness, aka bipolar disorder, is going to increase. And I want to help stop this. And I don't think lithium or any super new drug is going to be the answer. I do believe that it can be treated through human interaction and therapy and coaching. This is the greatest time in history as far as, lack of war and, basically no bad shit happening. And yet we are the least happiest in history. And, the trajectory is, it doesn't take a scientist to see the near future about how this trend is going to turn out. And so I believe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I believe there is a silver lining, and it's that we can take this mania, these bouts of highs and lows that we experience in this day and age, and channel that into art. And so if you are out there and you are suffering from potential bipolar disorder, even mild mania and depression, or you know someone that is, I believe that artistic expression, creative expression is a way of treatment for this disorder. And it's something that I want to really explore. I know it's kind of a far out analysis, but that's what this whole podcast is about, is really pushing the boundaries and exploring ideas that people don't want to discuss or just would call crazy, if you will. But I don't give a shit. As long as I can come from an intellectual standpoint, from a research-based standpoint, I believe that I can really expand the consciousness of psychology and creatives and really make a difference without sounding really egotistical. So next week we're going to look at a book called The Van Gogh Blues, The Creative Person's Path Through Depression. And I thought this was a good transition because the author looks at how creative people are going to experience depression. He says it's a given because they're regularly confronted by doubts about the meaningfulness of their efforts. And this is what I was saying earlier, is that you have to have meaning in your work. You have to have some sort of creative merit to what you're making. Like, you have to be expressing an emotion. Really, what it comes down to is there needs to be emotion expressed. And a lot of the music I hear from people who send it to me for feedback, there's no emotion, and we can't have that. And so the book we're going to look at next week looks at how you can find healing in your depression through enhancing your sense of meaning in your art. And I think that'll be really cool to look into, and will help us not only in mental health, but as artists. And that's like pretty much the gist of why I created this podcast, is not only to answer the questions that I've had for a long time that people don't want to answer and discuss, but also to help artists through their journey, and to help them deal with the highs and lows that can come with being an artist, and ways of coping and channeling the struggles into great art. And I do think, as a psychologist and as a musician, that you can take your struggles and your hardships and you can use it to create amazing things. And with that, close down this podcast, get back to your art, and get fired.